here's what I know. It's common with lots of folks, but military in particular, especially folks that start as early on as they do, like you. You start in your teens or your early 20s. Even if you go that 20-year distance, you're going to be so young still and have so much more left to do, let alone, couple that with your mentality about retirement's, not even part of my mindset, so you've got your best years ahead of you. Give us a snapshot of where you're at in your professional journey today.
So I graduated the NNI program back in July. Been an agent for about a year, working on implementing this from my church. We've just been gifted a building from another church that was closing up that was not financially secure.
Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents Channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's interview, I'm going to be sitting down with my buddy Will. We're going to be talking about his origin story with infinite banking and where he's at today. I've had a great time getting to know this man, and I hope that you enjoy. All right, Will, or just so people can make sure to find you, Mr. William Fullington. I did think that it was interesting that today, the time of the recording, is Veterans Day. I thought about that on the drive into the office today. I was like, oh, what a neat connection right there, just because you're serving. So if you would, just let people know who you are, where you're from, just like a basic intro as we get into your IBC story.
Yeah, my name is William Fullington. I'm married, 3 kids. I grew up as a military kid myself. Ended up doing high school in Las Vegas, Nevada, before getting myself to Texas as quick as I could for college. And I commissioned there, joined the military as well as my dad and my grandfather had done. And I served for 20 years. Kind of typical experience for most people in like high school and college. Knew nothing of like personal finances. Nothing was ever really taught except how to sign a check. Nothing really preparing you for adulthood. Kind of graduating, getting the commissioning and starting to get a paycheck. Just knew that I wanted to live below our means as a family and get the school debt paid off as quick as we can to have a good foundation, kind of the basic common sense stuff that you get from scripture reading and just kind of watching the world, seeing what debt does to people.
I love it. So I want to know more about all this kind of stuff, and I already know some of this, but I want everybody else to be able to hear this as well. So like, were you one of those guys that early on, or just tell me when it happened, when you knew you wanted to go into the military?
Man, I don't know when I actually knew I wanted to go into the military. It's more of just a way of getting into going to college. So high school, I always kind of felt it was easy. It wasn't really challenging. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way because education standards have dropped substantially over the years. But a friend of mine in high school, 2 years ahead of me, got an ROTC scholarship to go to Texas A&M with the Corps of Cadets. And he came back after his freshman year telling stories about that. I said, that sounds like fun. Getting yelled at and the extra physical training and everything else, all while trying to navigate college with that. My first year of college, at least, I spent majoring in the Corps instead of my academics, and my grades ended up reflecting that. I originally thought I'd graduate and then go be a cop in Las Vegas, where my brother is. But I ended up getting offered a flying job in the Air Force, and really enjoyed doing that. So stuck with it.
I love it. Well, let me say thanks for your service. And I know that there are going to be some people out there that'll be curious right there. Well, what did you fly? What kind of aircraft have you been in? Say what you could say, etc.
The AC-130, which anybody who's played Call of Duty will be somewhat familiar with. I was a navigator and weapons systems officer on that plane.
Yeah, and you don't have to divulge, what we had in private conversation, but I do remember a funny story that you had in reference to a very well-known and popular movie as it regards
Uh,
You remember?
I think I'll probably save that one from not being on podcast and
I
YouTube
understand.
thing.
I'm just saying, it's like, every industry has its stories. Everybody has their stories, and you're no exception. Very, very cool. I always think Call of Duty, Moab, the mother of all bombs. My brothers were really into that kind of stuff. So, very cool. So then how soon, because like even when you said we wanted to live below our means, so were you married, right after high school, college, military?
I met my wife in college. Actually, we ended up meeting online, and then later finding out we were in a physics class together. The professor she'd asked a question. The professor had, like, instead of some sort of respectful calling on her, said something to the effect of, "What's your question, beautiful?" Something like that. And I ended up later finding out that was her. I remembered her, remembered that happening. But now we met my fifth year of college. Needed a victory lap after my freshman year. Was majoring in the Corps, and then a couple of degree changes, and spent about a year dating, and then got married a year after I commissioned.
Fantastic. And then you three kids. So like, what kind of age spread are we talking about here?
My oldest is 15 and a half. My daughter is 12, just about to turn 13, and then my youngest is 7.
I know I can relate to those ages and that marriage story and everything. So I think that's cool for people to be able to hear. All right, so something about your buddy coming back and you hearing about getting yelled at and rigorous physical activity, something about that appealed to you. And it doesn't surprise me that that's pretty close to, a law enforcement trajectory. I had a career in law enforcement myself, studied criminal justice in college, was one of my majors. So I feel like I could understand some of the appeal, for people that are built for that. But furthermore, you've made the full career, and I've got clients now, which is really cool. I've got clients that are in the military, and I am, having financial conversations with them around the IBC. And so what maybe, I'll plant the seed perhaps here of what we could even talk about in particular when it comes to the military and folks that serve in the military. I feel like there are certain battles, financial battles, that they face that maybe even normal people don't. It's an interesting situation because the pay can be steady, but the human problems show up in maybe a particular way. I mean, like even down to how, as soon as you go off base somewhere, there's just going to be ways that you could just blow money just super easy, right? And you've probably seen this from a lot of guys. So I'm probably saying too much, but I'm saying that's something that interests me to perhaps talk about. But let me ask you this particularly. From high school, was there anything in that same category of, well, we probably learned how to write a check? Do you remember anything else about, financial direction from that age in life other than maybe some class where they literally showed you how to write out a check?
I literally remember no education from middle school or high school except for, this is a checkbook, here's how you write a check, and here's how you fill out the ledger at the front of it to keep track of the balance. That's all I remember from any public education on finance, personal finance.
Right.
Yeah, I would say the same in my experience. And that's so, it's pitiful is what it is, that we're taught how to give other people our hard-earned money. We're taught literally, tactically, how to do it, but not how to perpetuate it, not how to keep it, not how to protect it, not how to anything other than get rid of it. And that seems to be what most people have done. So there's that. Okay, well, what about from college then? I mean, you were obviously in a physics class and, other class, but what about, were there any revelations? I mean, because like that language that you said of living below your means, where did that come from and when did it come into your life, I guess is what I'm trying to hone in on.
I don't think that came from anything in college either, just kind of reading Proverbs, debtor is slave to the lender kind of mentality, recognizing that I had ROTC scholarships to go through the Corps, and that gave me a little bit of a stipend to be able to pay for things above and beyond the living and tuition. But it was only like a couple $100 a month, not really enough for anything. So kind of always had through high school and college, like had that, like didn't have much spending money there, and just wanted to get rid of the debt so that that would free up spending money.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I would say the exact same thing too, that there were no huge revelations for me by going to college. Financially speaking, I actually realized how I mean, I don't want to call myself dumb, but it's dumb looking back on it now, getting grants or getting student loans and then going to the store to get your books for that year or that semester and seeing on your account that, oh, I've got more I could spend. Well, let me buy one of those, let me buy one of those. Buying stuff, but not realizing, really not realizing, not understanding what that would mean. Well, that means I'm going to be paying for that for years to come with these student loans that I'm going to have. It's preposterous, and I actually used infinite banking to pay off, my student loans. So 5 years in college, straight into the military after that, or did you do some part-time stuff on your way in?
No, straight into the military.
Very cool. Very cool. So when along your military career then, because you're still active currently, but you've got the end of that career in sight, right?
Yeah.
Less than a year or two?
About a year.
Yeah, about a year. That's right. That's right. Awesome. Man, that's so awesome. What happened along the way that you, looking back now, could say, well, that prepared me to receive infinite banking, or how did you get exposed to infinite banking? Like, when did that happen? How did it happen?
So I guess going back to what prepared me to be able to receive it, commissioned, finished training out in San Antonio, Texas, and then went to my first assignment, Hurlburt Field, Florida, Northwest Florida, near Pensacola. Showed up there and had basically everybody telling me, you need to buy a house. You're going to be at Hurlburt Field your entire career. It's the only base where your job is. From instructors to my parents to in-laws, everyone's like, buy a house. I'm like, okay. So my wife and I, she was still in nursing school in San Antonio, but she was going to be graduating soon. We knew we were going to have kids. Bought just a little bit above our budget, knowing that, hey, first lieutenant promotion comes pretty quick. She'd be working. It would quickly be within the budget. But did the VA no down payment thing to buy a house in early 2007. Lo and behold, about 4 years later, they opened another base that they moved my aircraft to. And I got moved in 2011. If those years sound familiar, they're not quite the peak in the valley of the housing bubble, but they're pretty close. We ended up having to save short sell our home. With my wife not having a job immediately when we got there, in any month where we didn't have a renter was just going to completely blow our budget, because with a no down payment loan from the VA, that mortgage payment was pretty high, especially for a first lieutenant. Maybe I'd put on captain before we moved. I don't recall exactly. In the meantime there, we had attended Crown Financial Ministries classes that our church had put on. Very similar to Dave Ramsey. I haven't been through Dave Ramsey's classes, but pretty similar in mindset, setting a budget and the more conventional advice that would probably be opposed to infinite banking. But that experience, and combine that with, as a lieutenant in training, had been pitched by a New York Life person, my Roth IRA, that I knew I needed to start from all the conventional advice, be this Roth inside of an annuity. Didn't fully understood what that meant, but at the time, but put away basically the minimum payment in it just to have the account. Something started. The typical questionnaire for what your risk tolerance is. Said I should be moderately aggressive, and the person was supposed to be administering the account like that. About 5 years later, after we'd moved, looking at my account, wasn't expecting to see be a whole lot like really big or anything, because we were focused on getting out of debt more. But I was surprised at how little it had grown, and realized that my agent who was supposed to be managing my accounts had been fired. I hadn't been given a new one, and my account had just been sitting there idle. I'd look at the annual statements, but was trying to not. God's in control. I can't. The money's going to do what it's going to do. I'm just putting the money away and trusting the market, if you will, right? Well, also come to find out that the agent that had set up my Roth had not set it up as a moderately aggressive. It was set up like very conservatively. Got another agent assigned, and they started to correct that some, but ended up like the surrender period associated with that was all done. So I ended up rolling it over into something I could manage myself, instead of paying assets under management fees, because I did not get my money's worth on the fees I had to pay. So that kind of laid the groundwork for me. And then coming up towards the end of my military career, 2023, starting to plan, didn't know what I wanted to do at the time for my post-military career, but kind of had some ideas of what I didn't want to do. Had gotten to having about a year's income savings to weather the transition without really impacting the standard of living for the family. And then got to thinking, like, man, if I have to use this, like, I had a high yield savings account that was making 5% at the time. So it was over $5,000 a year that this account was bringing me in interest, and that would compound for the rest of my life. And then it like hit me, like, if I have to use this for retirement income as I'm transitioning and moving to my next job and location, that interest is all going to be gone forever. And about that time, I heard an advertisement for somebody talking about private banking and family banking. They were not Nelson Nash Institute affiliated, but scheduled a call with them to find out what it was. And that kind of started me down the path.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you about the one burning question that comes to my mind about the other agent that you had with that other account. What did you get a new agent because you finally raised your hand and said, "Hey, I'm not getting any attention over here," or did they finally get their head out of the sand and send somebody to connect with you, or what?
Yeah, I was looking at the values of the accounts and said, "Hey, this isn't doing at all what I thought it would be." So I ended up calling directly to it was New York Life, if I didn't say that already, is where the account was, and that was when they told me. Maybe they sent me some letters, but odds are they came when I was deployed, so I missed them. That type of situation. I know, but that was what made me reach out and ask, like, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And then they told me, "Hey, your agent got fired. You're kind of in this limbo. We need to get you a new one."
Ridiculous, but not necessarily not the norm. So would it be fair to say then, throughout your working career in the military, that debt played some part here and there, and it was something that you worked on from time to time to pay off or something?
Yeah, we got out of debt fairly quickly. Not too long after my move in 2011, I think it was 2012. Ended up needing to replace a car that brought on a car loan, but about that same time, we had paid off both school debts that we had. So we were debt free except for one car in 2012.
Okay, awesome, very cool. Short selling the house, man. That's and here's the thing, because mortgages are always, I mean, I know that was a particular situation and everybody's different in a way, but also at a high level, things kind of show patterns and stuff, right? And that just seems to be the overall pattern when you really crunch the numbers at a macro level, that every 5 to 7 years, most people are moving. That's just the case. And then they're paying the vast majority of their mortgage payments towards interest on a house that they're not going to end up keeping. And that just means that there's a perpetual high volume bleeding out of interest dollars. It's a, in military language, you'd quickly talk about stopping a femoral bleed, right? Before you're worrying about anything else. If that's going on, it doesn't matter what else is happening. It's like, we got to stop the bleeding, and a mortgage is a very big one, if not always the biggest one for most people. So that sticks out to me, even though particularly you add on top of that everything that did happen around 2008 through 2012 and whatnot, and it's just exacerbated. I do believe I've heard about Crown Financial Ministries. I've not looked into them, but I've heard of those similarities that you were talking about. So, but you were trying to do you were doing good things along the way. You were paying off debts, and then you were making investments into retirement accounts and things that you were told, hey, it'd be good for you to do this, good for you to do that. You're doing those things. I love hearing about you saving up a year's worth of, expenditures or income or whatever, planning ahead for that pivot. So what about the messaging at that point in your journey then? What about the messaging that you heard online or whatever struck you or compelled you to say, okay, I want to pursue that. I want to find out more about that. What went through your ears?
Between your
It was I think the family banking, building that family economy, and family culture, not just being completely atomized, socially atomized, and having I'm gonna save up my retirement, and then my plan is to spend it all down, and if there's anything else left when I die, that's what goes to the kids. And the kids are on their own when they move out, type thing. I've never didn't like that. I have no doubt that if I had asked my parents for help making that down payment on that first house, that they would have helped, which would have made it so we didn't have to short sell. But I didn't know that I could ask my parents. It just wasn't part of how we interacted and how our family at the time. And I want to build that for my kids. I want them to know that, hey, don't go to another bank to buy your car. Buy that from me. That profits the family, which profits you in the long run. When you go to buy your first house, same thing, down payment. If you finance that through us, finance the whole thing through the family, if that's how things work out. College, instead of any loans that they need to go to college, that'll be funded by the family, keeping the money in our family economy. I think that was what really rung the most.
Okay, I can appreciate that. We really do have such an opportunity as parents to paint the picture of what's normal, what's expected, what's possible, like at the cultural level of the family. Man, I don't know. I feel like we have a real similar, because of our age is going to be one part of it, but money it's a taboo subject. Typically, it's not taught in schools. We don't really hear much about it in church unless it's one or two things, try to live out of debt, give charitably, those types of things. And then in the home, there's not typically anything either. But I know that you and we were talking about, business that we could do with our children before we started, hitting record on here. And just like, that's a different way of doing things, which I love. Okay, so you acclimated towards that, or you gravitated towards the family aspect, the legacy aspect, the intergenerational aspect. Okay, so as you're learning about this thing, what did you continue to like? What did you not understand right away? What did you have to, mentally work through? What resources did you get to? Just elaborate on it if you would.
think the easiest thing to answer there first is what was the hardest, and that was I was focused on the numbers way too much early on. I started as an engineering major in college, as most people who are aspirational pilots do. They think that's going to get them to better odds if they're some sort of engineer. Anybody listening, that's not true. But still, I'm kind of Excel numbers oriented. I was trying to do all the tables and calculations to compare different things, and then through my journey finding NNI, an agent in the NNI, and learning more about IBC, learned that, oh, there's multiple companies and each one's got different products and all the products are different. Each product has different rider options. I already felt that if I was going to be applying this paradigm shift, completely different from most people in how I manage my money, I wanted to be able to explain it. If I couldn't explain it to somebody, I didn't know it well enough to apply it. So I went down the YouTube rabbit hole, if you will, deep into the noise, trying to learn about the different companies, the different products they offer, the different riders. Well, which one's best for me in my situation? Why would I not pick this other one? And then you also have policy design, 1090, 397. First thing I got shown was a 397, about as skinny base as you can get, which at the time I wasn't initially like opposed to, but I wanted to understand the risks. There's trade-offs on everything. So if I'm going to be having that kind of a skinny base, I wanted to know what I was giving up in the long run. Man, if I'd found an NNI agent from the beginning, all of that would have been smoother. I would have learned faster, gotten my first policies in place faster. Now, thankfully, it was all within 6 months of my birthday, so I was able to backdate and didn't effectively lose any time. But yeah, that was the hardest thing for me to get through. What were the other parts of your question?
Yeah, well, let me stay right there, because what was it that... So that is a tendency for a certain kind of person. Engineering types are definitely in that category, no question about it. And I've got those folks that I work with. What was it that you came across that helped you work past then any hang up of, but the numbers, the numbers, the numbers? You know, I love this idea that, and I've probably said, no, I'm sure that I've said it before, and in another business context, I've said the numbers don't lie. And in a way, that is true. Numbers are just numbers. They're data. They're information, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that a person even knows how to read the numbers. They might not necessarily know how to interpret what numbers are going to mean in real life at the ground level, right? So both those things, I believe, are true at the same time. Yes, numbers don't lie. Data is data. And yet, how an individual is set up to interpret that data is going to matter when they go to apply a concept like infinite banking. So I'm just curious, what helped you get past getting hung up on numbers to doing something about it?
We've heard it mentioned quite a bit on everywhere that in the book that rate is more important than volume. In the numbers, we're usually focusing on rate, the APYs. You froze. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening intently. I have been told that before.
But so I understood it enough to get my first policy in place, and I was comfortable moving forward there. About the same time, my truck wasn't. I've multiple years left on its life, but a new engine is a lot cheaper than a new truck or even a used one. And decided to put a new engine in that, and instead of paying cash, financed it through my policy, and that just helped me see exactly how it works instead of giving up the interest in that about $11,000 would have earned. I'm just going to pay a small amount of interest. The interest that I'm going to earn over the rest of my life on it is going to outweigh the small amount of interest I'm paying to a company that I own. About the same time, I heard some other agents telling stories, and then also with my son, he needed braces, so we wanted to. That was going to be about $5,000 from the orthodontist. They said that's going to be, we'll finance that with 0% financing. It's like, no, I know the 0% financing thing is a scam. What if I pay cash? And they said, hey, that'll be $4,500 instead. I made 10% on that money right there. Here in, I think it's probably Paul Fouguer talking about putting his 3 kids through private school up in the Northeast, which ain't cheap, and going to the school and saying, hey, if I pay the full year at the beginning, what kind of discount do you get? Getting a 20% discount for the year. Well, he just made 20% on that money. Those little things adding up, the volume of interest that you'll maintain is so much bigger than the rate. Yeah.
That's actually a subject I really have in mind to dig in on. So I'm so glad that you bring up just normal life stuff, like the kids need braces, the truck needs work, etc. School, because now in the infinite banking footprint, I feel like there is a lot of emphasis on asset procurement using policies. All right, so paying premiums into policies to be able to have a cash value that you can leverage, take policy loans, go out and buy income producing assets. I love that. I love that. Using money to go out and make more money. Beautiful. But in the meantime, are we, needing to do things with our children's schooling? And are we going to do those things? Yes. Are we driving vehicles? We're just doing normal stuff, right? Like Nelson actually has a line in the book where he talks about appliances, cars, like normal, what I'd say, blue collar, everyday, normal people stuff. So I'm just saying, I don't want to overlook underscoring the normal everyday use of this concept in our lives while still paying attention to, oh yeah, let's go do money things. Let's go do business, or let's go do investing from this family banking system that we have. It's great to do both. That's all I'm trying to say there, I think.
Yep, definitely.
Cool. So those were some of the real life first things that you used a policy or policies for, the truck engine, braces. Oh, I love it. Okay. Is there anything else that you could reflect on that you feel would be valuable to other people who might have some sticking point, or you could even say, anything else that you just picked up, learned through the process of first exposure to the concept, to actually deciding to pay premiums and make policy loans, like anything else that happened in between there? Because that's where it really matters, I feel like. Once somebody implements the concept, they actually implement it as a lifestyle, it's game over, right? But going from exposure to that, a lot of things happen between our ears in however long of a time that is, too. So what was the time frame for you even? Can you remember, or just give us an idea of first exposure?
It was probably 6 months from exposure to first policy in force. Think it was about August to then February. It was October that I was like, nope, I get it, I'm in. But then at that point, I hadn't found an NNI practitioner. It wasn't until I think mid-October I even knew what the NNI was. I was too slow to just look at the back of the book, and on the bottom it says Infinite Banking Institute. But nobody looks at the back of books, right? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, let me ask you something there. I can't even remember probably either. How soon did you get to the book in your exposure trajectory? And then what did you, same question. When you read the book, what'd you like? What did you not understand?
It was about a month and a half into where I got the book. I was first sent another marketing book that the first agent himself had written that mentioned Nelson Nash in the intro, but that was about it, and didn't explain what was going on quite as well. It wasn't for about a month and a half after that when I got the Nelson Nash book. The section that really rung with me was the even distribution of age classes, creating that family culture and legacy, passing it on, standing in the gap for my family to make things better. Because we all feel it, we know it, the inflation in this country, worldwide, but it's by design, stealing wealth from us, those who are farther from the money, the creation of new money, and transferring that wealth, that purchasing power, to those who are closer to the creation of new money. That's why we see housing prices going up by 5 times while median income has only gone up by 3 since the 1980s, I think. The most modern financial advice is geared towards trying to move us closer to the creation of new money, which, being a Christian, 8th commandment, thou shalt not steal. Well, inflation is stealing from us to transfer to them. And then we are participating in that, unknowingly for most of us, but participating nonetheless to the harm of our neighbors. So wanting to make things better for my family. It was harder for us to buy a house than our parents, wanting my kids to not experience the same. I want them to be able to do that, to raise a family, have grandkids themselves, and continue. So that chapter really probably brought it home for me. It's not just about maximizing the income I can have in retirement. It's about building a family economy.
Mm-hmm. Well, then that doesn't surprise me that you really gravitated towards that chapter. And I love the language, by the way. I mean, I know what you mean when you talk about standing in the gap. I love that kind of language. Awesome. So you did get into the book a month or so. Was there anything in the book itself that you did have to work through or read again or think through or have a conversation around, so you liked and immediately got and felt a connection to an even distribution of age classes, family orientation, just like you've already been saying was something important for you? What's something you had to work through on the book, I wonder?
Probably the economic value added portion. The talking about the finance charges, the 34% that is the numbers he used from early 2000s. That didn't quite ring as much for me because I didn't have much debt. When we moved, we were in base housing, so I didn't have a mortgage. It was literally just that one car payment at the time. But the economic value added, that concept of everything that you're doing, bringing more value to yourself, treating your putting it in my own words, treating your personal economy like a business, your personal finances like a business. That withdrawal from my savings account to buy whatever it is I need to buy, I need to treat that like a loan to myself, because it is a loan from myself. But most of us just treat it as I don't have to pay it back. Well, if you don't pay it back, then you're leveraging your future labor to reproduce that purchasing power in your life again.
I don't know if I've ever, how you describe that, I don't know if I've ever thought about EVA in the way that it's working in my mind now, so I'm going to run it by you, see what you think. And everybody listening, you can let me know down in the comment section. I think that's hard for people to get a hold of as well, because if they do put money aside somewhere, they think, and by the way, to give some credit there, they're already beating what most people do. All right, so most people, we spend what we earn. We don't even set aside. Okay, so I'm saying congratulations. But also, if you set money somewhere and you take some out, We don't think of it as a loan. Nobody's taught us to think of it as a loan. So here's the visual. Visuals kind of help me. So as you were describing that, I was envisioning, well, okay, if somebody is saving money, they're stacking bricks. They're stacking bricks, okay? They're going to look at that brick pile and say, it's my pile. If I want to take bricks out of my pile, I'm going to take bricks out of my pile. And no, I don't owe myself. That's not a natural thing for us to say, I owe myself. I owe what I had already built. But here's the thing. If I take 5 bricks out and I go to build again, because money must reside somewhere, Nelson would say. If I go to build again, am I building at the same level that I would have been able to build from moving forward? No, I'm down to here. That void is there because I let it get there. And if I'm going to build again, I don't start where I left off. I got to go back down. So I don't know, that just helped me feel that sense of owing to myself by visualizing it as bricks. I'm literally going to start off lower than I otherwise would have. Money has a cost to it. It's that expression of that void there that I hope that people are feeling. Okay, cool.
And piggybacking there, and maybe carrying the analogy out a little bit more, you're stacking those bricks for a reason, to build a house. It's now going to, you take those 5 bricks out, now it's going to take you more labor to finish building that house. Well, what we're building with IBC is our family economy, able to provide all of our needs, and part of those needs are the passive income in retirement when we can't work anymore. Or if you're not using IBC, you're just using your savings account. You take money out for a purchase, you now have to work longer to meet that ultimate need.
Yeah, and then for us big picture thinkers, which you've already said you are, and I am too, big picture, we're looking to build something through infinite banking that we'll get to whatever level it will get to. And then our children get to start from there, not where we started from, which is scratch. You know, typically every generation just start from scratch, start from scratch, start from scratch. And then their working careers look like a lot of indebtedness on top of starting from scratch. You know, but again, if the next generations can pick up tools and systems that don't mean they have to start from scratch, and then they also have the education and experience that we could work into them together by what we do together, then who knows where it grows and scales to from there.
And it's not just starting from scratch, it's starting from scratch in a harder environment because of inflation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you implemented the concept. You used a policy for a few different things. Catch us more up to speed then. What else, did you do with your system of policies? What continued learning did you do beyond becoming your own banker?
Kind of keep it like in the family topic for a minute. I never did 529s for my kids. The big advice, didn't like them, didn't want the money locked up. I knew that at the time. So maybe that from the beginning when I had kids, maybe that mentality also prepared me for IBC, not wanting it locked up. But another part of the reason I did it was I didn't want it to be money that was guaranteed theirs. Meant to be a teaching tool, which money is a tool, and one of the things we can do with it is teach. We raise our kids as good as we can, but sometimes they go wayward despite our best intentions. And wanted to be able to have that carrot and the stick. And hey, if you fly right, you listen to your parents, and you do follow what we teach you from Scripture and etc., then this is yours for school or whatever else after when you are starting your family. If you don't, then this is mom and dad's money. So I started moving that into policies for each of the kids. And instead of the savings accounts, it's going into life insurance policies for them, which has given me a tool that I can then use to teach them how to do this. I could teach them using the main policy for the family, but a little bit harder. It's easy for them to see when it's isolated to their expenses and the things that they want to do and their repayment. So my son last year, out of nowhere, decided he wanted to do a sprint triathlon that they had a couple of hours away from here. He had just started swimming with the club swim team, and we agreed to let him do that. So we went down to southeast of Roswell, New Mexico, and he did this triathlon on a Walmart mountain bike. So that was kind of rough. But he comes home and says, "Dad, I want to get a road bike for doing triathlons." Guy at our church, he and his dad had done multiple triathlons and whatnot, and he was actually looking to sell one of his. So I said, "All right, son, you can take a policy loan from your policy to buy this, and then we'll pay it back." So I've gotten to start teaching him how to think about and manage his money directly, not just, hey, we're going to go through the book, which for kids is probably a little bit harder. They don't have the real world experience. So that's been pretty neat, being able to show them. And then I also feel like I'm being a better steward for my son and his future family, because now as soon as he gets married, there's death benefit protection for his wife, just by changing where I stored the money that I have saved for him. It literally cost me nothing, and I'm being a better provider for his future family and my other kids' future families.
So I love that, because I'm certain that the protection aspect of whole life insurance policies that we use for infinite banking can be discounted too much, disregarded too much. You know, at the end of the day, it is protecting a life. And, you know, I'm at a point where we're weeks, Will. We're just a couple of weeks away from baby number 4 getting here.
Congratulations.
And thank you, brother. You know, but part of my mind, of course, is saying, well, when baby boy is 2 weeks old, we're going to have that application ready to submit to the insurance company and, you know, get that in force as soon as possible. It's the whole tree analogy, right? Like, well, when's the best time to plant a tree? 30 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. Protection's always an issue. You know, nobody's wanting to live in homes that aren't protected. Nobody's wanting to drive cars where they don't have insurance. I mean, we're even insuring our phones and other things, right? But not our lives. Not our lives. I didn't always put as much respect as I could have on protection. So that's been an evolution of thinking, even for me. And I'm somebody that when I had my first child, Will, it actually, being a dad, made me think about some things for the first time. I was a teacher in North Carolina at that time. I went out and I got whole life insurance on all of us, me, my wife, and our son, when I became a dad, because I did have a striking moment of, we need to have protection. Everybody needs protection. And I even liked the idea of whole life insurance, something permanent, something that for sure is going to be there. But even when I implemented infinite banking, I didn't value and understand all of what was available to me then, and making an intentional effort to acquire all, or as much as I could, of what was available to me. So I love that thinking about, by insuring children, you're even already setting up their future spouses to be protected people, you're providing for that unlikely, but also eventual case. We want everybody to lead long, healthy lives, but it's also an eventual case, and you're already doing something about it now proactively. So I love everything about that. Cool, man. I love the I love the story about the Walmart bike, but then also, you know, because that's something to his desire. You know, he wanted a bike. He wanted to go out and do a triathlon, and you're able to use a policy for something that he wanted to do already. For me right now, it's a zero-turn lawnmower. You know, one of my sons is wanting to get a zero-turn lawnmower, and he's working at home around our property to earn money, but he's also making money deals with me and his mother, where we're paying premiums into the policies, making policy loans, and doing things together where we're teaching him how to earn money on his money as well, so that he's working for money, but he's also using his money to earn more money, and he's got this goal of a zero-turn lawnmower. So I love hearing about your son's bike story.
I
Cool.
love hearing about that because my entire working life, I've been a W-2 employee. And there's nothing wrong with being a W-2 employee, but being able to have something else to fall back on. Maybe it's a side hustle, or maybe the government tries telling you you need to get a vaccine and you don't want it, so you lose your job. Having something else that you have the ability to say, no, I'm not getting that. You don't feel like you've got the golden handcuffs. You feel like you have options. You've got more freedom. So I'm trying to instill in my kids more of that entrepreneurial mindset like you're describing for your kids.
I love it. And there is a big difference, right, between folks who are career experience, W-2 experience versus 1099, solopreneurs, small business, etc. Those are both interesting folks to work with and to know. But even in that category of stable jobs, like you just gave one example. Well, what about this? When it comes to mandatory vaccines, well, right now I've got multiple clients that are dealing with furloughs. They're on furlough right now, not receiving active income because they have government jobs. And some of them, they're in different stages, right? Like I've got some folks, they've already implemented the concept and they're starting a second policy with me. And does this furlough derail their plans? No. Because they've already been on the trajectory of doing things privately for themselves, whether that meant they were able to pay off a lot of debt, or they were able to create additional income by using their first policy for business, or just different things. So nope, they're actually out here even while on furlough, not receiving active income that would be a pretty stable income otherwise in people's minds. They're out here getting more policies. But then other people, they are in the application process with me right now, and something's happened at the job, hours are down, you're on furlough, income's unsure, and that puts a pause in their life. They got to say, well, we've got these debts, and now I don't know about being able to pay premiums, and well, let's put this on hold until we find out. That's just where some people are, and then some people are learning about stuff like infinite banking because they were compelled to think out of the box because of something like a government shutdown or a furlough or a layoff or whatever. So it's interesting working with folks and helping folks, especially when they're working through life's hardships, right? And it's just a different come from when you've already implemented the concept. It's a different come from. So help me out with my timeline, Will. How long have you been implementing infinite banking now?
I've been doing it for almost 2.5 years, I think.
Cool, man. Cool. So when in your journey did you decide, and how did you decide? What that look like? That, hey, I want to help people personally. I want to be the professional helping folks.
After implementing my first policy, I'm an elder for our church, Grace Government Reformed Church in Clovis, New Mexico, a ruling elder. We're a church plant and didn't have a lot of resources and whatnot, but knew we were looking for hopefully getting a building at some point in the future. Money and savings account makes a little bit of money. You use CDs, you use a credit union that pays a dividend. You can get a little bit better, but did not feel like it was a good use of it wouldn't be a good steward to put the money into things like the stock market for the church's money, because if it's gone, well, now the church is screwed, for lack of a better way of saying it. So finding this, I was sharing it with the other elders. Explaining it to them and demonstrating to them how it would be beneficial for the church. We only pay our pastor a small amount. He has some tent making that he does, so he's doing okay, but he definitely deserves more than we pay him. But I showed him how just by moving where we're storing the church's money into a whole life insurance policy with the pastor as the insured, well, now we're giving him death benefit protection at no cost for the church as extra compensation. Through sharing that with them, and then sharing it with other people at work, my wife kind of pointed out to me as I'm kind of searching, deciding what I wanted to do when I left the military. She said, "Why don't you seem to have a lot of passion about this? Why not make this what you do for a post-military career? Help other people with that military transition. Help churches become more financially independent, not dependent on the banks, and help families create what I'm creating for my family."
There's so much there. I would love, and you know this, we've talked about this, I would love to field more conversations around churches and nonprofits, because everything that we said earlier about mortgages and the volume of interest that you were talking about, churches are in the same. We have buildings, we have edifices, where we're conducting our services, and we do have folks that we want to pay and compensate for their work in that field, our pastors and such. So I'm definitely looking forward to more conversations. You've actually already been in on a round table, and I would encourage everybody, you'll be able to hear more from Will in a round table that we had, so look for him there in that series. But I also want to field more conversations around this topic with you, Will. It's important. The churches as well we're bleeding out money that we don't have to when it comes to interest on all the things that we're doing. I mean, my goodness, we could talk about all of it. The lawnmowers and tractors, or the landscaping services, that equipment that churches are buying or paying for, the property itself, the personnel. There's missions. There are so many areas where we could talk about leveling up financially our stewardship of what we have access to, right? Because that's my philosophy as well, and that's why I say it that way, that we have access to, because it's not ours, it's the Lord's, but we do want to be good stewards of it. Now, I would say financial independence and autonomy from the third-party banks is the way to go about doing that. Any more thoughts right there? I'm saying we should definitely have a standalone conversation around that in the future. But those things, your wife's input, very valuable. You seeing the horizon of the military career, knowing you got plenty more to do, your passion around the subject. So just anything else that you would say then about that transition into becoming a professional? You've spoken a lot about the Nelson Nash Institute. We've, of course, got to meet each other personally, face-to-face, live, up in Cincinnati, Ohio, fairly recently this year, 2025, at a coaching academy up there. Thoroughly enjoyed my time with you. So anything else that you would say about that professional journey?
I just knew that military career was going to end at some point prior to probably about 2022, 2023. Hadn't given too much thought about what I wanted to do. Didn't really want to do the easy button of government contractor or GS civilian. Not my first choice anyway, willing to do what I need to provide for my family. And wanted to branch out and learn more of an entrepreneurial mindset, which becoming your own banker, even if I do end up with a W-2 job having to supplement somehow there, we're creating a business with becoming your own banker. This is, we should be doing two things. Whatever it is we do for a living, and banking, managing our family's economies as a banker.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me this then. How do you reflect now, being on this side of coaching academies and everything? How do you reflect on learning about and meeting people from and in the Nelson Nash Institute? How do you think about the practitioners program now? How do you think, what do you think about the community and other folks that you've met and events that you've gone to, like the coaching academy, let's say?
Man, I likened it a lot. So I've been to a couple of Christian conferences, and walking into those immediately, like, these are all my friends. I just don't know their names yet. That's exactly how I felt going to the two coaching academies I've been to so far. And I had to miss last year's N&I Think Tank, but I've already got the next one fenced off on my calendar. Already walking bunch of like-minded people who want to help other people improve their financial situation, their children's, their future generations, and also benefit the entire economy of of America, essentially. There is a solution. I'm just going to quote, try and do it from memory, something about how privatized banking really works. I think it's like on the back of the book. There is a solution to the current money madness, and all it is individuals doing what's in their own best interest, and in that, they benefit all of society. And it's just people engaging free people engaging in free contracts to solve a financial problem. But we're all working towards the same thing, like-minded.
Yeah, the high level, I love getting to the high level view of what does it look like if a significant enough number of people implement this concept. What does that mean for communities? I mean, because we've already talked about for the individuals and for their families, even intergenerationally. But what does that imply for a community? What does that imply for a state, for a country? If a significant portion of the folks are not relying on conventional financing, and if they are proactively protecting the generations in their family, I mean, if both those things are happening at the same time, right? That we're both protecting people, because 100 out of 100 Americans die, it turns out, right? And at the same time, we're controlling our financing within ourselves. It changes. It's, you know, there's this idea from privatized banking, how privatized banking really works, that, you know, if 10% of the population were to implement this concept, you know, the analogy that Carlos and them uses, that, well, you know, the branches would shrivel up on the vine, so to speak. You know, we could literally dry up the power that conventional financing currently has over the American people by privatizing it. So I don't know if I explained that well. That is a great book. I would highly recommend that everybody, once you've read Becoming Your Own Banker, and I was telling a prospective client, we've had this is cool, he's a government worker, actually, as well, currently in Germany. But in my process with me, he's in the Becoming Your Own Banker book, you know, and I encourage him, well, hey, you know, you're going through that super fast. Nelson does have a second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. And then another great read for folks is that How Privatized Banking Really Works book, Carlos Lara, Bob Murphy, Nelson Nash. Looks like you got a recommendation. Go ahead.
That book is actually free as a PDF file that you can find online, and it's available on my website. I'm sure if you don't have the PDF, I can give it to you so you can disseminate it. That one actually, Becoming Your Own Banker, was really good for me, but that one like pulled the thread for me on what's wrong with our current financial system. And this solution, Becoming Your Own Banker, isn't just about us. It benefits us immensely to take control of the banking function in our lives, but it's not just about us. It's about community. As you're talking about the effects of what's the effect of if a community does this, or if a county, state, or entire country. Don't recall where I've heard this, but I've been told that it's part of communities in India, where they have community banks where people don't go to other banks for their financing to start the businesses in their community. It's all financed in the community. And that community bank only does business within the community. The same thing can be seen, I've been told, in some of the immigrant communities, like in San Diego or other places, like a Korean community, applying the same thing. And what it's doing is very much like Greenwood, Oklahoma, the same thing. We have an example of that actually already in Greenwood, Oklahoma, the Tulsa race riots. Are you familiar?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was it. I wasn't so aware of the other examples you were giving, but that was the one that I was thinking of.
Yeah. Maybe the listeners aren't familiar with this story. They probably heard of the Tulsa race riots, early 1920s, I believe. Tulsa, Greenwood, Oklahoma, a suburb of Tulsa, Oklahoma, was the wealthiest community in the nation, and it was a black community. Well, what made it so wealthy? Everybody in the black community was going out and working outside the community, bringing their paycheck back into their community and spending it at the community grocery store, the community hardware store, the community clothing store. And then the grocery store owner was also buying his clothing at the community clothing store and the hardware store. The money just churned inside the community over and over, building wealth. And that upset the racist white people of the community who rioted, burned down the town, the suburb. I don't remember the number of how many people died in that, but definitely a tragedy. But we can learn from that, and becoming your own banker is applying the same thing to your family economy.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm remembering the number correctly of times that it was purported that dollars were churning, like you said it so well, in that community, but 7 comes to mind. But point being that the money was just just moving over and over and over again within that community. They were keeping the money. So yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking to implement at a me and you level to get started with folks that haven't implemented infinite banking yet is can we begin to keep what it is that you're earning? You know, everybody, I always encourage them, think of what you made last year. I don't care if it's 30,000, 300,000, 30 million, 300 million. Great. How much of it did you keep? How much of it do you have this year? How much of it is still working for you now? Or did you just spend that year of your life? So the time's gone. Time's always gone. And then you also spent the money that you gave up the lifetime for. You know, because typically they're both gone. So if we could start keeping that and then churn it, like you're saying, in an intergenerational way, then yes. All right, good. Great book reference. And since you mentioned that it was on your website and you had that information as well, why don't you just go ahead and tell folks where they could find you?
Website that I've got is reformedfinance.net. Yeah, I've got some other articles and writings up there kind of explaining some of the things we've talked about here. Applying this for families, how we can teach our families, and some other just general educational content.
Anything else contact information wise?
You can also find me on Facebook and then LinkedIn.
Well, I'm happy to put whatever contact information that you just verbalized. It'll be down in the show notes. Will's contact information will be down in the show notes. And I would encourage you to find him there. You know, is there anything, Will, that I haven't asked that you wish that I would have asked or that you would like people to know?
Man, it's like your IBC journey. I don't know where I heard this, but it begins the moment that you want to take control of your finances and stop abdicating control to someone else. The ones who make that decision to be their own banker and not just be whole life policy owners, they're the ones who are going to see the benefit of this. I've got 2 clients who it's just been awesome seeing this like really click for them and seeing them apply it for the benefit of their family and their kids, and their imagination is just exploded with, well, what else can I use this for to build our economy, family economy, and generate income without being a rentier, if that word means anything. Somebody who's just making passive income off of investments, essentially. But it really is a huge blessing, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm more of a post-millennial eschatology. So I see the power in this to build God's kingdom. Sometimes it's hard to be post-mill, amillennial. Things look pretty bleak out there, but this is a way we can resist and still do what we're commissioned to do, building God's kingdom, and show love to our neighbors and our future generations by putting their needs, by thinking about what's best for them, not just what's best for us.
I love it. Well, I'm going to say that, folks, eschatology doesn't matter when it comes to in the here and now. You know, Scripture says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So while you're bringing up a subject that I would love to talk more about, I love talking Scripture. I love talking theology. You know, at the end of the day, I like the saying where plan today as if you'll live forever,
Yep.
and live as if you'll die today. You know, I think infinite banking does, in the financial realm, does that exactly, right? We're protecting people now. We're providing for our own financial independence and how to be good stewards now. But we're also preparing for the long range. That's the first principle that we get from Nelson Nash, right? So regardless of eschatology, and thanks for saying the word so that I could repeat it, because I would not have been able to say eschatology, but with your description, I'm like, okay, I know what he's talking about. I've heard the word. That this is the layman's way to good stewardship, to financial independence, to protecting people, to providing for, you know, the here and now and what is to come. So,
Man,
I'm thoroughly convinced that this is a more scriptural, more biblical way of managing our money. If we look at in Scripture, the examples that we have, Abraham didn't save up his wealth to then spend it. He was working entire time, building a business to then pass to his kids. Even David and Solomon, it wasn't just for their own wealth. It was
there's a temple to build for one thing.
it was for the benefit of the kingdom of Israel. It wasn't until we saw the greed of Solomon's successor. I'm blanking on his son's name, but they asked him to lighten their load. The Israelites did, and he said, "Nope, I'm going to make it even harsher."
Rehoboam maybe comes to mind, but there's a Rehoboam and a Jeroboam, so it could be one or the other.
So he was doing that for his own benefit, not for the benefit of the kingdom. So we see kind of a contrast there between a version of conventional modern financial advice and biblical financial advice, financial management.
Well, I think you just gave us another fantastic subject that we should also come back to, the biblical principles and the overlay into infinite banking. Well, let's do this, man. Let's jump into some rapid fire questions. Folks know where to find you. I think they should look you up, and I would love to have more conversations with you myself. Folks will already be able to see the roundtable that we've already recorded that you've been a participant in. But how do you feel about some rapid fire questions?
Yeah, go for it.
I love it. So tell me about a recent favorite book or podcast.
My favorite podcast is definitely King's Hall podcast. They talk about a good breadth of things. They've had a series on history, Christian history, talking about Skanderbeg and Vlad the Impaler, like the actual history of these people. Their first season was about fatherhood. If I remember that, it might have been the second season. And it's just a really good podcast that I would recommend every man and listen to, and then also get your sons to listen to as well. I usually save those episodes for when I know a long drive is coming up when my son's going to be in the car. So
I got you. I also am thinking about what I need to be listening to when they're with me. And it could be something fun. It could be some song or some comedy or something from my childhood, and I want to relive that with them or whatever. But very often it's some kind of personal development of some sort. Okay, cool. How about either a favorite hobby of yours or a hidden talent that folks might not know about?
Man, I guess the little bit of a hobby and hidden talent. I've done some Bible rebinding, leather rebinding. Started out just wanted to make a Christmas gift for my wife. Was looking at buying her a good quality leather rebound one. Stumbled across some videos of like doing it yourself and gave it a try. Made one for her. Then did one for my mom, my sister for birthdays for them. Myself, getting better quality with each one. A handful for my pastor, or and then a couple other people. And I'm not doing any work as near to what Post Denipros Lux Jeffrey Rice does. I think he's actually in the Carolina area, but I'm pretty happy with him.
That is very cool. I like that. I've done a little bit of leather work, just simple things that I've wanted and just tinkered with. So, but I've never done anything like that. So that sounds cool to me. How about, just since we've touched on this, do you have a current favorite Bible character, and maybe why that person, means something to you now?
Oh man, never thought about that before. Because I generally kind of shy away from the like "you are David" type stuff that kind of creeps around in Christian circles. But I guess maybe I'd say like Peter, just from the brashness and the running head forth that he kind of was a little bit known for, speaking up a little bit too quickly, but then repenting and learning from it.
Cool. I was looking forward to that question, especially because I was going to be talking with you. I would say there have been different characters that I've, maybe appreciated more at different stages in my life, depending on what was going on, So it's always interesting to me to hear that from somebody else. How about, can you tell me something that was one of the most impactful things somebody ever told you?
And probably in the military career, um, a Dave Sloat, instructor and evaluator that I used to fly with, he told me one time that nobody's going to care about your career as much as you are. So to make sure you take care of yourself in that. In the context, it was the performance reports and the making sure the decorations that you need to hit the certain milestones for career progression. But that really applies to even like our personal finances. Like you get a financial advisor. My experience with the New York Life guy, he obviously did not care about. I obviously let him care about my finances more than me, and that bit me. I should have been probably paying a little bit more attention to that account early on. Like we need to take responsibility for ourselves, have the initiative and intentionality to care about, and nobody's going to care about your family more than you either.
Absolutely. How about, what's one of your favorite go-to healthy habits?
Every morning I wake up and I spend about 45 minutes, an hour reading. Start with devotional and then reading scripture and then diving into some other books, various topics, whether it's theology or economics or finance. That's usually where my reading is. But just getting that out of the way in the beginning, the time that is yours. Things happen at the end of the day, and the day runs long, and now it's time to go to you. Those things drop off. So the most important thing, put first in the day.
I like that. I've got some certain things that I like to start my morning with as well. How about sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Picnic or restaurant?
Man, that's a tougher one. Said mountains, so I think I need to say picnic with that.
You're coupling them together. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Sword or hammer?
Sword.
Interesting. Okay. What's one of the most interesting places you've ever visited?
I got to spend about 4 to 5 months in Uganda, in Tebe, on a deployment. And that was really cool. We lived in a team house, essentially. Just it was the military there doing our mission. But then we had to go out onto the economy to eat on the weekends. And we had people who from the economy who we had a cook. He went out and bought the food and then cooked for us during the week, and then cleaning staff. And it was just really drivers, so that we would go when we went to other places to meet for why we were there, like the embassy and other things. Getting to meet those people and talk with them was really cool.
See there, especially with a military background, I figured, got to ask that question. Okay, what characteristic do you value most in someone else?
Integrity.
All right, and then I got this question from my boys at the supper table one evening. Would you rather be able to breathe underwater or fly?
Fly. That's an easy
man.
one. Breathing underwater is kind of limited use. Flying, you can get a lot more use out of that.
I understand. Yeah, I didn't know which way you'd go with that, because you already fly, so it's like, okay, is he going to say that because he does fly and that makes more sense? Or, no, I'd rather be able to do the opposite because I have flown so much. So, man, Will, I knew this would be a fun conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't wait, till we have some more on these subjects that we've been talking about here, dive in on those. This has been a real pleasure for me, buddy.
I agree. It's a really good conversation. Thank you very much for the opportunity and honor of being on your platform to introduce myself and get to know you more and kind of elaborate more on our shared vision and mission.
I appreciate that, man. Awesome. So Will's contact information will be below in the show notes. You can reach out to him there. If you have suggestions about things that we've referenced and mentioned that we could cover in the future, let me know down in the comments section below. My name's Jesse Durham. You can find me at durhamtalents.com. My hope is that you do live and leave a lasting legacy.